Hello guys, gals, and NBs. Today we are looking at 2D feedback displacement. This is more of a general tips and tricks video. But we will turn it into a result that looks something like this. Or this. But you can probably get creative and make this look a million different ways. So let's get started. Start by dropping down a constant chop. Let's set the X and Y resolution. And let's also create a value for the ratio. I'm working in landscape today, so that's 1280 by 720. And the ratio is 16/9. And let's create a UV map with 2 ramps. A ramp top, drag and drop the resolution. (32-bit float or GBA). Copy and paste it. Set it to vertical. Connect it to a reorder. Input 2 green. Blue 0. Connect it to a null, and let's call it end. This is a UV map. It represents the position of the pixels. Red is left to right. 0 is this side. 1 is this edge. Green is down to up. 0 is down, 1 is up. And now, with these 2 ramps, every pixel has a color of red and green that represents its position in UV space. Let's drop down a noise and remap it to our UV map. Drag and drop the resolution. (32-bit float). Let's connect that to a remap. And connect the end into the seconds input. And it looks exactly like the noise. That's because we haven't made any changes to the UV map. We can make some changes to this noise. Let's connect a feedback here. Drag and drop the end null. And let's connect a math to the reorder. And multiply it by something really small. Like 0.008. Let's connect an over and put this over the feedback loop. We are getting some weird effect going on. Let's reset the feedback with a keyboard and chop. Let's drop down a displace top in the feedback loop. And let's connect a noise. Let's just copy and paste this one. But this is pure craziness. Let's set the source midpoint to 0. In the displace top. And let's displace vertically with green. Let's see what happens if we just give the displace a very small value. And turning off the monochrome. Now the UV follow the directions from the noise. Let's connect a slope and see what happens. Let's just turn the amplitude up first. We need to turn the midpoint down to 0. And let's set the green channel to vertical luminance. Let me show you what happens here with a circle. If we turn the softness up, it moves along that gradient away from the center of the circle. Now, what if we could rotate these vectors by 90 degrees? So instead of moving outward, they turn. We can do that with a point transform top. But isn't point transform meant to handle points, and not textures? Yes, but they work with the same logic. Let's set this to vector. And rotate it 90 degrees. Look at that twirl. But it looks kind of uneven. Let's fix that by increasing the displacement amount so it corresponds with the ratio. We now have a twirl. Let's turn on the noise. Let's translate this noise. A constant chop. And a speed chop. Connected to a null. And drag it to the translation. Let's, instead of a circle, use a ramp top. We can copy and paste this. Set it to circular. And animate the phase with another speed channel. Cool, let's have some fun with this. Let's connect a transform top over here. Scale it to 0.5 and move it to the corner. And let's set the tiling to mirror. Now this is pretty. Let me show you one more little trick you can do with the vectors. Let's turn this mirror off for a second. And let's use a constant top. And a math to bring these values down. And let's add these to our vectors. And they all fly away. If you give it red, it flows to the right and left. You give it green, it flows up and down. And if we set the extent to repeat, whatever flows out at the bottom re-emerges at the top. So yeah, that's something to play with. Let's start post-processing this. Let's use a lookup and color levers picker. We can also use a limit. And if we quantize the values, we get cleaner colors. And we can make changes in this noise. If we quantize the positions, we get this pixelated look. I think this is fun. Let's add a touch of lens distort. And Luma blur together with a ramp. We can also add a noise to add some grit. But maybe this isn't your aesthetic. Maybe you want 2D particles. We can pretty easily turn these vectors into a 2D particle system. Take a look at this. If we look at this UV map, let's turn off the displace. And instead add the vectors to the feedback loop. Let's just disable this over real quick. I'm going to forget to connect it later, so don't forget to do that. Let's view this as point. And then we need to remap these vectors to the feedback. Let's view as points. We now have the same movement, but as points in 2D space. And with a limit that loops at 0 and 1, we can have the same repeat effect. So yeah, you can use this texture to instance points with a geo and so on. Let's go back to the displacement. Look at me struggling to figure out why everything turned gray. It's because you forgot to connect the overtop back into the feedback loop, dummy. Okay, we can also use this as a height map in a Phong or PBR, or as instanced points. Let's look at that. Connect it to a reorder and select the original UV map in the first input. Set input 2 to blue. OK. Okay, I finally figured it out. Let's attenuate the height with a math top. And we now have the movement in the height channel. Neat, huh? So yeah, have fun with this. The possibilities are endless. All of these files, and more examples of how to use this technique, are available on my Patreon. Cheers.